Hey, it's me Nesser and welcome to the Nesser Show. On the couch with me today is Fionnuala Moran, a journalist and broadcaster with her own show on RTE Pulse. This episode includes topics on sustainable living, the Irish radio industry and global climate change. I hope you leave inspired. Hey, it's me Nesser. Welcome back to another episode of the Nesser Show. Today we have the wonderful broadcaster and journalist Fionnuala Moran.
Hi.
You want to introduce for the people who it might be their first time seeing you or getting to engage with you? Do you want to kind of explain what you do and introduce yourself?
Ooh, the $1 million question. Yeah. So I have been on RTE Pulse since 2018, celebrating the Irish music scene, mainly in the spaces of rap, hip hop, R&B, a little bit of neo soul sprinkled in when I can sneak it in and get away with it. And then I was an entertainment reporter in a past life, and then during the pandemic, I did a master's in climate change, policy, media, and society out in DCU, and transitioned into more sustainable journalism and TV segments, everything else like that. And during that time, as well as losing all of my brain cells doing the masters, I kind of just made that sort of my main thing and went freelance. And then I've just been living my best freelance life, which has been really lovely.
Your Instagram stories are quite exciting and just so different. I don't really see much people doing that, so for me it's been refreshing.
A wonderful niche for me at the moment.
But yeah, how did you even get into presenting and broadcasting?
Do we go all the way back, or how far back are we going?
You can start wherever you want to go, and then we'll figure our way out from there.
Okay, so many, many moons ago, I think the love of radio came from my dad. We used to always be going to my granny's house in Crumlin, and we lived in Bray and Wicklow, and we were going over the Dublin mountains, listening to Andy Kershaw's radio show. Yeah. And it was nothing to do with Andy Kershaw, God bless him, but I always felt really car sick when we were going over the mountains. This was pre the M50, which makes me sound ancient, but it was not that long ago.
I've travelled from Waterford to Dublin.
You get it. Yeah. The kids these days don't know how good they got it. But yeah, so then I just eventually, his voice still to this day makes me feel ill. But that was world music. That was every different kind of genre. So my intro to music, I would say, was this wildly broad education in it growing up. So really, really enjoyed that. And that was always really encouraged in our house. We did piano lessons, but my parents were brilliant. I remember when what would I have been, 8? I think it came out in 2002. The Streets' original Pirate Material. It was one of my favourite albums growing up. And I put it, rinsed it on repeat, and they'd even listen to it when we were going on car journeys. And my parents listening to Mike Skinner at that age, they were like, Jesus Christ, not into it at all. The mad garage thing coming through. But yeah, so we were always a musical household like that. And then the love of radio, I really believed. I went to DCU, I did communications. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in school. I wasn't this person that was that's the path, off I go. And I believed, because I've no family in the media at all, so I really thought you the nepotism that everyone always says. I was no, you have to know someone to get in there. Turns out that's not the case. Even the nepo babies are such a big thing at the moment as well.
Maybe I would be a nepo baby.
I would love to be a nepo baby. Maybe it could have fast-tracked me a few years, but look, we find our own way. So then when I got to DCU, just randomly got involved in all the societies, and one of them was the DC radio station. I can't remember if it had a name. I feel like it did, and I'm forgetting it, but it was a radio station out in DCU anyway. So I did my first show there with 3 gals who are still my best friends from college to this day, and that was called Playing Perfect, with the little, we got to do the roll in the hour, and it was so embarrassing. Our Facebook page still gets views and likes every now and then, and we're just oh my God, who is still searching for this?
You guys are really connected with the public online.
Totally, yeah, very dedicated following. We might go for the reunion next year, we'll see. But yeah, so that was my first intro to radio. Made a heap of mistakes there, and then finished my course, didn't really think much of it. I was okay, that was fun in college, but again, don't know anyone in the industry. How the hell do you get in there? And I started working in a job that I really, really hated, which I think is a great catalyst to anything. And I was just it was corporate PR, and it's no badness on corporate PR. It was just absolutely not for me. And I think figuring out in life what is not for you is a great way to find where you're meant to be.
Especially if you don't have a passion that you're pulled to, you almost feel like you're pulled to everything.
Totally. Or even if you do have passions, but you just think they're not that reachable or not that realistic, to then be oh, no, I definitely can't do that. I was 22, and I think I would have been the first out of our college group of gals who got like a Monday to Friday job. So I was sitting there like 8:30 to 5:30, and I was like, this can't be the next 40 years of my life. Like, I can't do this. So I was only in that job about 4 months, and I left, and it was lucky, it was really low stakes. I was living at home at the time, so I had the privilege to do that, which was fantastic. And I started doing, just as I was quitting that job, the Park Studio course, which is gone now as far as I know, but people like Lucy Kennedy did it, lots of people came through it, and it was presenting, production and directing, and it was really hands-on. So they got you in doing every single job, and they were amazing. So out of that, I was able to get into TV3 as a runner, and that was my TV career started. So they just took the people from the course who'd kind of been the most driven and let us go for it, and I was like blown away, never looked back, worked about 7 days a week for the rest of my 20s being a TV runner. And then that same summer that I started doing the TV bits, I got my foot in the door in what was Communicore, which is now Bauer, which is the group that's News Talk Today FM, Spin 103, 98 FM, all those stations. Got my foot in the door in their training station, Freak FM, which is spelled F4Q. FM, I assume it's still around. I haven't seen anything on social about it for a while, but got like lots of slots then. And was able to make loads of mistakes, put my demo together, all of that stuff.
You mentioned like making loads of mistakes. What was your one favorite mistake that was able to kind of propel you to what you wanted to do?
God.
Or something you only found out in hindsight?
There's lots of interesting things, and some of them weren't even mistakes. Like there was one time I got, there was a job going down in Spin Southwest, and I went for it, and they were like, just flatten your accent a bit, because it would have been quite posh at the time. And obviously down in like Kerry, they didn't want to listen to some dub being like, meh, even though I'm a proud Wicklow woman, but everyone just assumes the accent's from Dublin. But so that was like fair criticism, but like, a lot of the mistakes that you make are things like crutches. So I'll probably do it a lot tonight now because I'm tired, but like reaching for words, being like, or like not knowing the out on your links or anything like that, or just not getting to the point quick enough sometimes, because the station that we were on, they were training you up basically to be 10 spin hits in a row presenters. So it's really snappy, it's in and out, it's just saying like some interesting fact about the song, it has to be quite current, like keeping really on top of your pop culture, because they're not like, you don't want to be like, oh, Beyonce had twins, and people are like...
But like, that's quite interesting, because we were talking off camera about how sometimes we find like the one person that I always hear on radio is Jason Derulo, regardless of what year it is. So is that something that you feel is as emphasized, like, was that a mistake to you, or was that a mistake in the industry, do you feel?
Yeah, and this was the most disappointing thing to me that I was absolutely shocked by, that like a lot of radio presenters, I don't know if we're going to get like cancelled out of radio for saying this, a lot of radio presenters don't get to pick their playlists. So that will be done, there's like music managers for stations, and they do a really good job at making sure that like all of the BAI regulations are hit. So that'll be playing a certain amount of women, playing a certain amount of bands, playing a certain amount of Irish acts and stuff like that. So all of us, because we're in the Irish music scene, I think would agree that those Irish percentages set by the BAI should be so much higher, because the scene here is insane now. It's thriving. Like whatever's happened in the last few years has been magic to watch, but maybe the BAI regulations haven't caught up yet. I'm not sure.
I think it's interesting to hear that though, because one thing that I really don't like is complaining without a solution. You know, and we always talk, oh, let's get into the rooms. Like there's a lot of conversations. Let's get into the rooms. Let's like, do we need to improve the quality of our music? But if you're saying that in certain places it's not really up to whoever is picking, then maybe find the ones who are picking, because like you said, like you've been on RTE Pulse, and that's something that you would have been in charge of your own.
Yes, which I absolutely adore, and that's such a privilege to be able to pick all your own music is amazing. But one of the bits of feedback that I've heard from several people who are in those positions about picking the music is that like, yes, we want to see more of that. We're not the average listener. The average listener, like they're not living and breathing and sleeping the Irish music scene. Like, even we had some people in on work experience in 2FM this week, and we were chatting away to them being like, oh, what do you listen to, and what do you listen to? And like, while they do listen to some Irish music, people, like they're saying they love Lyra and different people like that, and they know Jafaris and stuff, they're not looking at the extent that we are of the talent coming through. So a lot of the time if someone's listening to the radio, a lot of people as well just don't listen to music to find new music. They're listening to find something familiar. So that's why you get like a lovely mix of kind of old school stuff in with the new school stuff. There's only so much new you can introduce every other, well, just without people kind of tuning out and be like, I don't know any of these, what's going on?
Hey, it's me, Nesser. So sorry to stop this episode, but need to take the moment to encourage you to like this episode and subscribe to Culture Shop. Thanks. I don't know what, I was meant to say something when I did that. Guys, just watch it. And like even somebody had said to me before that like the case study for the average listener is like middle-aged woman dropping her kids to school.
And it depends on the station, but yeah, like for a lot of stations, the average listenership in radio is generally only ever meant to be 15 minutes. So that's why like some stations, and I can't listen to them because they drive me mad, would have 5 songs on rotation.
Yeah.
And like Linda Coogan-Byrne has done insane work on this in the diversity and inclusion space, and she comes really strong from a gender angle as well. And a lot of the times, if it's that high rotation, the 5 songs might be all men, and they're likely to be 5 white men, and that's just the research that she's done really, really recently. Some of the stations have really like shown their arse there, but also the stations who have been shown their stats before, because she's done all the deep dives, they've really changed for the better in that regard and gotten so much more diverse. So there is massive change coming there. But we're also not the average listener. So
exactly. I think, like,
and
so
we do forget that too, I think.
It's so funny having this conversation because I literally had this, like, right before you came, we were talking about how there's a lot of work been done in diversity and inclusion spaces, right? But to sometimes a detriment, making us a bit more hyper aware of our surroundings than we are. So when we talk about the scene, like we were saying, or whoever is in the scene, that's still underground music in Ireland. But if we compare to other scenes, like for example UK, US scene, where we would have seen people breaking through to now become the likes of a Stormzy or a Dave or a Central C, like sometimes social media does this quite poorly. The accessibility to other people makes us think we're somewhere that we're not, right? And it's, if we're thinking about that and BIA percentages are a certain amount, like we still need to work to a certain level in general for like Irish music, let alone urban Irish music.
Yeah, and we do all live in our own echo chambers as well. So while my music scene and your music scene that we both exist in, and like we're fighting for the same scene to get on air, but then
somebody else is doing that for theirs, like.
Yeah, or just like that, because we're in our own echo chamber, someone else is in their echo chamber and they're perfectly happy with the music that they're being served up. So they're not looking for change there. And whereas we're like, why is no one like screaming about these people? But yeah, I don't know. I feel like in Pulse anyway, I've had a brilliant time of that is the scene that I get to serve. So the music I'm listening to and the shows I'm listening to in there, I'm not like, oh, like I can't hear what I want to hear. Yeah. I play what I want to hear. Exactly. So it's all there for me. Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting one. And I think 2FM has done a brilliant job as well of bringing up those talents and putting them on the rise. And like we've had Manjola, Abby Coulibaly, all of them, like Javaris is on Rising a few years ago. They've all come up through Rising and gotten the shine. Sella was on Rising last year. So like, that's been
this year. I know Sweet Lemon Days on it.
Yeah.
Beta's, Beta Da Silva.
Yeah.
For a while, his voice. Like, so I think we are making strides, and it's definitely something that we should be obviously proud of.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think definitely grace and patience are 2 qualities that I think as a community in general that we should work towards in figuring out the balance of what actually works. And okay, if this radio station doesn't play the type of music that I like, okay, let me switch to one if it's in
absolutely
area.
Yeah, and that's the strongest vote. And then the Jay and Laura's come out, which are like, I think they're quarterly radio ratings, and if everyone's gone like, oh, I didn't tune out for this reason, that feedback gets back to the stations.
But we don't know that until we do the research, right? But a lot of us are quite lazy.
People are busy.
Exactly. Might as well just like throw on Spotify and figure out what I want to do. And
and that's a big problem that radio stations have now as well, is like trying to get young ears back from streaming stations because they're getting served up stuff. So it's a tricky balance of like serving the demographic that you have and trying to keep like the younger people in then as well if they're not being served. But yeah, I think stuff like Choice is really cool like that, because then if you ever go to the Choice stages or anything at the festivals, it's like all of the people that you'd want to see.
What's one Irish artist career that you've been kind of privileged to have been there in their rise on?
So I really pride myself on my track record of who I bring in for interviews, and then it's so bloody exciting to see where they go from there. When Tola McKay just had Goodbye out, and was it even... No, I think it was available to stream. I think she'd done 1 gig and that song was out, and I saw the talent, I was like, please come in. Yeah. And she came in, and then like that time next year she's like on Tommy Tiernan and everywhere else and like taking over the world. That was incredible.
Her, that day, that was like for Earth, that was the craziest experience of my life. Like,
she's phenomenal.
Like one take.
Yeah.
She had it already done, like, and I'm pretty sure she had like a hurt leg or something that day. Like, and she was just able to just do that flawlessly. Oh,
superstar. Like, and I think she'll go like international. She looks like she's building up something big. Yeah. Who else have I had in over the last while? The Love Manjola obviously is a very recent one that's done insanely well. I was his first radio interview and now he's thriving because I came off the back of it. He'd just come back from London. Was this This was last summer or 2 summers ago. I am very lost in space and time after the pandemic. I was trapped in a little master's bubble, so I missed all last summer as well. But yeah, he'd just come back from London. Him and Abby were doing loads of bits over there, and I was able to get him in. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, blah, 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 like amazing, you've done loads of stuff. And he was like, no, that was my first interview. I was like,
yeah.
What? Because like,
so we've been trying to get him in here for time, but he's so busy as well.
I should have caught him when I caught him. he's too Hollywood now.
So careers at RT Pulse.
Absolutely. But there's been some really exciting ones like that. I had Lyra in when she was starting off as well. My brain again, because I'm a little bit on the sleepy side today. It's not firing.
Big hitters as well.
Yeah.
Abby was a rising star last year, or someone to watch.
Yeah.
As well. She's done amazing as well.
Yeah, I've had the Hair Squad lads in as well, but like they've been killing it since I was a spinny.
Let's talk about them. We're not happy with them.
Oh, okay.
Like, we miss them as well.
Oh, okay,
like,
very good, very good.
Lovely love.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you mentioned your masters there. So it's kind of nearly like night and day. What you kind of started off in and slowly continuing. And what you're kind of proceeding in right now. So you predominantly work in climate change and sustainability.
Yeah, I'm trying to spin a lot of plates and I'm enjoying it because I've never been the kind of person, like everyone's always, when you're going through school and college, they're like, narrow it down, pick one thing. And I think that's really bad advice for a lot of people of our generation because like we don't have the like school to grave career trajectory anymore. Like the 40 years at the one job, get your watch when you retire thing, that's dead. Like you're gonna have a heap of different jobs throughout your career. So for me as well, I would get very bored doing just one thing for any given time. And stuff like Pulse, that's like one show, one day a week. Obviously you're listening to the new music that comes through during the week and planning interviews ahead of time, but that's not a massive time commitment. So yeah, I love my sustainability stuff. And I think there's a big overlap with creativity and climate and culture, and maybe not to the extent that we realise just yet. Because like even things like moving away from capitalism, and I'm not going to go too far down that route, but like that frees up a lot of time if we restructure society for people to celebrate like creativity and music and all the stuff that I think actually makes life important. But yeah, I'm not going to.
Even the word restructure rising society, that's a big task in itself, let alone the little subgroups. Like, I mean, that's pretty much where I met you on. But so reading your own profile, you were saying around 2018 you became vegan. 2019 you decided to stop fast fashion or kind of
just quit buying it.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, why did you start veganism? Because for me, that's when I started. Like I stopped veganism. So because I went to college in America, just for a bit of background, I went to college in America, and that started a lot quicker over there. So by the time I came back here, I was like, yeah, I'm never drinking milk again, doing all this thing. Came back to Ireland, and the only thing I could eat was lettuce.
Yeah, like no options
and it gave me
all.
More anxiety to actually eat, and I've had enough chickpeas to last me a lifetime.
I feel you.
I just felt like there was a limit on it, and then even the word sustainability, I was like, is this actually a sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah.
Where I am, so it's just.
And even now, like the food scene, it's gotten a good bit better, and there's a lot of fun options now. But if I ever get like another like vegan curry thrown together for the sake of it, like a generic one on the menu, or like there's patties and they're just like dry veg mashed together for a burger. I've had a lifetime supply of them. I don't need any more of them. That is a basic menu. I don't want that.
But what was the kind of passion behind that? What spurred you on to make that change?
We were chatting just before we started about cognitive dissonance, and for me that's what that was. So I tried vegetarianism before on and off, like as a little experiment in college, and I found it cheaper, and it was like couldn't give yourself food poisoning, or you had to try really hard like eating vegetables. And it was just quicker and easier for me, but it never really stuck, because when I started my radio career, when I was doing a bit of freelance TV production and a bit of stuff on Freak FM, I was trying really hard to get into Spin 103.8, so I became a spinny and worked up to lead that team there as well. But at the time, we were out all over Dublin 5 days a week doing that job, and all the vegetarian options everywhere were like a family's week's worth of cheese in a sandwich. And I was like, I'm going to have a heart attack in a year if I keep eating a block of cheese for lunch every day. That's ridiculous. So I went back on meat then for a little while, but I watched just before New Year's 2018 the documentary Earthlings, and like I wouldn't recommend anyone to watch it, but it did it for me.
Because it came out around that time as well.
It's like really heavy and really grim, but it just goes through everything. They call it speciesism, which is basically like treating animals differently than we treat humans. Not that we treat humans very well really either, especially in the climate crisis, but it was going through all of those things, and I'd always seen myself as an animal lover, and then I was like watching all of that stuff, and I was like, this kind of jars with my values. So that was it for me. And then overnight I was like, I'm vegan. Then I had to figure out what the hell veganism was.
How has that walk been for you, like in the sense of having an actual like balanced diet?
Really, really good. And I would say initially it was so much better because, like you say, there was all choice in Ireland when it came to like processed food, vegan food, like that's like nice and tasty. So I was eating pretty much a full-blown like plant-based whole foods diet. I was the healthiest I'd ever been. My hair was shiny as hell, my skin was glowing, and now there's like a vegan takeaway in every single place you go to. So in that regard, it's gotten worse but better. She really popped off today. But yeah, it's for me gotten a lot better. I'm really enjoying it. I don't see myself looking back at the moment, but I've heard of so many people who say like they were doing it for years and then they went back in it and whatever else. I don't think I'd ever go back to meat because I've just made, and like I don't preach veganism that anyone else has to do it. I just show why I enjoy it on my social media and stuff. But for me, I've made kind of a flesh to life connection that I'm like, ooh, but like I would potentially go back to vegetarianism if dietarily wise. I don't know if I was ever pregnant and veganism wasn't suiting my body. I haven't done any research on that, so I don't know yet. But yeah, for now it's working.
About like the cognitive dissonance is the biggest thing, because even in like behavioral change, like you need to like you're changing because you really don't want this thing. A lot of the times it's not that you really want this thing. It's more like because a lot of us want to run, we want to like be healthy, we want to do this. Why don't we do it? Because we don't hate the lifestyle that we're living right now. And it doesn't hurt us enough to do it. Do you know what I mean? So it seems like it gave you like some sort of like freedom to be able to be you.
I thought so, yeah. And even it was very handy as well working in media offices when there was like buckets of donuts getting sent in every day. I was just like, I don't eat that. So that was great from a fitness perspective because I was really into the gym at the time. Kind of fallen off track with that, but we'll get back there. But I've lost my point. So basically everyone when I started off was like, oh, do you not feel so deprived? And still sometimes people kind of ask about that. I think people know a lot more about it now, so they just kind of get it. But I never saw it as a deprivation thing. It actually added loads to my life because I was finding all of these new foods and learning how to cook them, learning loads of different new recipes, and it was giving me way more energy. I just felt like my skin was better and stuff like that. So it really added a lot to my life. It didn't take stuff away. And had I felt like I was really deprived, I probably wouldn't be doing it. Like I don't make any changes in my life, even though they sound like I might be depriving myself, like things like quitting fast fashion, like ditching animal products. It can sound like you're taking away from your life, but for me, it's just really bettered my life and my health.
You probably also have done enough research to replace it adequately, right? Like I was not able to. I'm just guessing here because I know for a fact that I was not adequately like supplementing.
I've known, like I'd seen some of my friends and they were eating like, this is some of my friends who've been vegetarian before, and I was watching them in college and I was like, that diet wouldn't inspire me to go vegetarian. Like it doesn't look great. Like again, some of the processed stuff, like heaps of like corn or different things like that aren't like fabulous, that you just be like,
corn, bolognese, I've had enough. Like, and coming from like an African home, like where it's just meat and chicken and
this stuff needs a hell of flavour on it.
I'll just stick with my little chickpea and squash here. It doesn't really work for me. But even just going into fast fashion, like that is quite interesting to me because like the word, like back to one of the reasons why I chose not like for veganism wasn't for me, because there was a lot of at the time contradicting like articles for both, right, where it was like, and then looking at the context of Ireland, where Ireland is a highly agricultural country, I was like, okay, so if we're talking about the word sustainable, right, yes, there's the global world, but in Ireland, does it actually make sense for me to be eating an avocado from Kenya, to be having like fresh strawberries in the winter, like when we have like things that grow in Ireland ourselves? So what can I do to be more sustainable here? Like they make broccolis and flipping, I don't know, Midland somewhere.
Mad.
Do you know what I mean? So for me, I was just like, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense for me in my beliefs. If my global world is Ireland, maybe looking a bit too small, but that's what
but there was
me the most, there
was a thing that went really viral last year, and it was an apple in our apple season here that had been flown in from New Zealand. So like Lord knows how long it was like refrigerated, which takes a load of emissions as well, and sent all the way across the world, more emissions again, to sit in a shelf here when it's probably lost a heap of its nutrition on that massive journey when there was apples on the trees in Ireland at the time. So like the global food system is really, really complex, and there isn't like an easy solution. Like everyone going vegan isn't like going to fix things overnight. Now, it is scientifically the least impactful diet on the planet, but again, within that, you could be a very sustainable vegan and not be having, say, loads of almond milk and avocados, which are mainly grown in really drought-prone regions. Like we've all read about the Mexican cartels, the avocados, and those kind of things. Or you could be eating lots of local in-season stuff that hasn't gone anywhere. So like, I think everyone can make changes within their own diet that's going to suit them. And whether that's like supporting your local farmer and buying like a veg box from him down the road, or getting like, if you're not vegan, getting like local eggs from someone who's close by as well. There's lots of amazing little co-ops around Dublin 12 even. I was like,
even since COVID, like a lot of people have started their own thing.
I've started like even growing little bits out my back garden, so I try not to buy like big salad bags now as well, because I'm like, it's on the window, amazing, and it tastes so much better, and there's no air miles, and you can't run out when it's just on the window, because you just go out and snip it. Yeah.
Just go fight it. And
on the flavour point as well, Rachel Amma is an absolutely fantastic YouTuber you should check out if you want like fab recipes with like just amazing stuff and no shortage of flavour, because that is a thing.
Yeah, flavour for me 100%.
Yeah, and especially when you say it to Irish people who are like used to boiling veg to shite, and they're like, how do you just eat vegetables? I'm like, no, they actually taste really nice and you cook them properly. Just if you're going to boil Brussels sprouts for 10 hours, they're obviously not going to taste good. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a different side of things there, where kind of veganism, we're talking about local and stuff like that, where as sustainable fashion and fast fashion is completely different, right? In the rise of like capitalism in itself and decrease in our economy, right? I've seen kind of two sides of this, where people are saying that yes, okay, it's coming from poor places and overworked industries and stuff, but at the same time, people here or people in our world are also under poverty level and don't have enough money to spend a lot on whatever. So then why should they? And how could they even possibly start funding their lifestyle if they can't afford cheaper clothes, you know? Yeah,
I suppose for me, this whole thing is about overconsumption and not just consumption generally, because the people who are struggling financially, I don't think they're the problem. I think it's influencers who have loads of money who are promoting whole culture and being paid a fortune to do it, and then perpetuating this thing that we all sort of feel pressured to buy into, of like, oh, they only wear like that outfit once and then they get a new one, so I can't wear this, I can't be seeing this again. Like, that's a really new phenomenon that we've all taken on board in the last like 10 years.
Like I'm not even big, nobody's checking for me, but I'm like,
we all do it now. Yeah, my friends who aren't even on Instagram are like, oh, I wore that the other day, I can't wear it. I'm like,
nobody remembers.
Like, on what planet were your clothes built to be worn once? It's a direct... I'm really fascinated to learn more about the psychology behind how we've all taken that on board so easily. But like that, anything we've learned, we can unlearn. Yeah. So for me, the whole quitting fast fashion thing came again from a documentary. Like, I keep watching documentaries and making like massive life decisions overnight. I'm like, so I'd been doing the vegan thing for a year, and I thought like, oh, I'm saving the planet. And that was like kind of... I'd been sustainable in lots of other ways before, but that was the first like major step I'd taken in that direction. And then one of my friends who works in fashion, she was working with British Vogue at the time, Nivo Dunn, a brilliant journalist. She was like, oh, maybe don't keep going through the high street shops every 2 weeks, and kept like telling me to watch this documentary.
What's important to them, right? Like,
well, I just didn't know. And so I watched the documentary that she was saying, then it's called The True Cost, and I would have considered myself a feminist and everything else. And then I saw what my fashion choices were doing. I believe in like unions and workers' rights and everything else like that. And I saw people getting shot and not being allowed to protest to get like more than the basic wages they were promised, like not even remotely close to a living wage, never mind a minimum wage. People getting paid like $1 a day. I saw what was happening in the factories in Bangladesh from all of the brands that we buy from here, and how they wouldn't even pay compensation to the families after the Rana Plaza collapse. Over 1,100 factory workers died, like, and they complained repeatedly that the factory was in bits, like, and they couldn't be working there. So I was looking at all of the garment workers who are largely female and being like, okay, I'm supposed to be feminist. This is not intersectional feminism. If I'm just like, I'm a feminist who's just going to look at other women in Ireland, and that's where my feminism is going to stop. So I just had a reckoning with that, and obviously the sustainability ties into it as well, but the ethics of it was a really big thing for me. So I was like, quitting fast fashion isn't a perfect answer, because I am not funding those garment workers, but now I do that in an activism way. So like, I'll sign all the petitions, say like Fair Wage EU petition that's going around at the moment is trying to get living wages for all the garment workers in the EU, which you would think at least they would have living wages in, they don't. So there's things like that going on at the moment. So Yeah, like again, it's really nuanced. Can you take down capitalism overnight? No, you can't.
There's always that what's the point type of question,
Yeah.
you know? And I do feel like, even going into our next topic, I do feel like the individual feels a lot of pressure for corporations' downfall. And it's almost like, okay, yes, like all of us would literally have to stop and change to stop these people, and they would probably find another way to get us, because if it's not clothes, it's phones, right? And it's kids, or it's women, or it's like African people, or it's Asian people. So it's like back to what kind of hits home,
Yeah.
but also doing your bit. Because even growing up, like this is a really proud moment that I have, but I was part of the Green School Committee. So
my little niece has just joined. I'm so proud of her.
3 green flags there in Chamor, you know, Florida Mara, Florida Mara, blue, right? And back then, right, our major issues was litter, water, conservation. Like that was what we were doing. The rain, clouds, and all of these, and acidic. Like that's what we were so like into, and what made sense to us. That's about like maybe 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Now. Whereas like climate change has taken a complete different turn. Whereas back then it was cool in primary school, you know, because you're just in groups. But like outside of school, like literacy in that was so low.
And even in the media now, climate literacy is something that throughout my master's they were talking about a lot, and RT's journalists did climate literacy training really recently as well. So that's something that's coming along everywhere, and we need that in every industry. But so bad at being candid that I'm like spooked by the camera. But yeah, so for me, what were we talking about? Sorry guys, I've been up at 5 a.m. We're not trucking too well today. What was the question?
Trying to like between climate literacy and trying to like the changes from when like about 15, 16 years ago, what we were trying to do to what we're trying to do now.
Sorry. And I was a fellow little green girly in school. I signed up to clean the pond in primary school, and then I was an environmental prefect in secondary school. So yeah, right there with you.
Rap, so that's
we had a song. It's so bad. Do you have your rap?
No, I don't.
Do you remember?
Any of it.
Oh, convenient.
I'm not. Battle rap, let's go.
No, my song was embarrassing. Like I can't even remember the name of the song that's based on. Oh, me neither. Babe, I'm about to break your eardrums. Cyrus is like, we all love pondering, just try fifth. We've got new nets. You won't put them down. And I've already probably been cancelled from those 10 seconds. So that leads. Don't know why I haven't been picked for the Eurovision yet. Like, we'll get there. But yeah, I think it's fascinating because in the Masters as well, we were studying things about like serious games and serious education, and it's a way of kind of how do you communicate really, really heavy topics to young people, because you don't want to leave them really despondent and depressed and feeling disempowered. You need to empower them. So sometimes starting with the simpler things to understand, like local litter picking is a gateway into plastic pollution, and then you can tell them how deeply entrenched petroleum that makes up most of our plastics is with the oil industry, the fossil fuel companies, who have been not only creating climate change but also subverting the science that they knew about it since the 80s or the 70s, I think it was. So yeah, and they the same companies making 40 bill profits while they're telling us it's a cost of living crisis and the energy prices can't go down while they're laughing all the way to the bank. But yeah, more on that another day. But yeah, like the issues are changing, the literacy is building, and what I am really heartened by is that there's a huge want in all of the spaces that I see for people to figure out what they can do. And on the level of how like, oh, does the individual change make any difference? It absolutely does, because like I think we've seen in Boohoo, say as one example of one of the fast fashion brands, towards the end of the year, they were the most shorted stock in the UK, which means like that is a massive indicator for me that, okay, maybe fast fashion has had its day. And what you were saying about like they'll try and get us in another way is so true.
PLT had that one
exactly
thing, and it was so funny to see where everyone's values lied, because there's like initially everybody's like, oh my god, this is amazing, and then people started questioning it, and we were like, wait, so if we understand how capitalism works and everything is £1 or €1, who's getting paid?
Yes.
And how much are they getting paid?
And that way I thought that documentary was so clever, The True Cost, because it's like, we are not paying the true cost for the £1 bikini, say, that they had, because the garment worker is being ripped off, the environment is being ripped off. They're probably pumping the like raw chemicals into the local rivers that the communities are relying on for their water. They're all getting diseases then. We're not paying for any of that, never mind the climate impact. So the emissions, the precious natural resources used up to make all of these things that are being, not built to last. So then all of the garments, when they're wrecked, are going and being dumped in beautiful places like the Atacama Desert in Chile. There's just piles and piles of fast fashion dumped out there in what should be a beautiful natural landscape. So yeah, paying the true cost for stuff would be a great place to start. And then it wouldn't be feasible to buy fast fashion or make it at the cost that it's being made at. But on the cost point for sustainability, I think anyone who is struggling cost-wise with fast fashion, like, the thing that we already own is the most sustainable thing. So that costs nothing. You already own it. You can also make money back off your wardrobe by like reselling stuff and leaning into the circular economy. Yeah, which is becoming a huge thing here. Even setting up little shops on Depop or vintage shops like that. People are getting so much better, like realizing there's value in your own wardrobe. I don't know if you know.
Capitalism is also taken over in that sense as well, because like charity shops used to be a no-go place for the majority of people, and now it's almost just as expensive as.
In some places, I still get insane bargains. So this top was €3. It was like brand new when I got it in one of the charity shops in Terranura, and I'm sure it would have cost like €40, €50 to buy new. And then there's an amazing new Irish platform, Thriftify, and they've got all the charity shops online. Yeah. So now you can shop from the comfort of home.
And even a way to do it like in a classy way, like there's like some goods are good.
Yes.
Goods are green for you.
Greens are good for you, yeah.
And I know there was one you were at.
Happy Days, I love her bits. But yeah, like anything rental like that, the circular economy will become huge in the next few years, and we just will be like, oh my God, I can't believe we used to buy everything new, like whether it's for weddings or graduations or any mad occasion that you're going out for, like, and being able to rent things for like a fraction of what it costs new, you get to buy nicer brands, and it's just a much better way to go, I think. And I think, and maybe this is a bit too optimistic, but I think our obsession with like owning stuff might fade away. Yeah, I think during the pandemic as well, it's going two ways. A lot of people are leaning real heavy into sustainability, and then a lot of other people are getting really polarized and going further and further down the hyper fast fashion route. Like when Shein came over and did their pop-up, I was just like, I don't want to see it. But obviously there was queues for that again, and that's a fascination again. And I get it, like the dopamine rush of getting something new. I still love that, but like my mindset shift has just been new to me over brand new, and it feels the exact same.
Also, it's like the subliminal messages that we're getting all the time on all platforms, that we're like, as much as we think we're in control, there's only a fraction of what we actually control in our own decisions. But I think that's just going completely left of this conversation.
But even like that, I don't think so, because in so many ways, like again, as a feminist issue, like it's mainly been women targeted by the micro trends. So if we're the ones being forced to keep up, I think it's another way in some ways to keep us financially subjugated, to be like, okay, like keep up with these, it mightn't be beauty standards anymore, because we've got like brilliant body positivity movements now, and everyone's just so much more accepting of everyone's differences. But now if it's like micro trend, you wore that top with that piece cut out last week, so this one is the one that's in this week, you need this bit cut out this week.
And they make things so like distinctively like a part, like August winter.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like there's certain things that if you know what season that came from.
Yeah.
The next season's completely different. So you can't carry things over.
And there used to be 2 fashion seasons a year, and now we've more than 52. It was 52 when it was fast fashion. Now I think Shein put out like 1,000 new styles a day. So like the mind just that level of consumption is insane.
Shein's always just kind of what's the word? I've always felt quite overwhelmed because I'm not a shopper. Like I'm more like I'll go into the store and buy what I want to buy. So being online and Shein never was my thing anyway. I just get my friends to get it.
It came like into our cognizance and like over here kind of after I quit fast fashion, because I think it's 4 years in that journey now, but I can see my nieces getting targeted by it, and like the influencers that they follow and on TikTok and everything getting paid millions to promote it, and they don't need the money to like work with the bottom of the barrel things, but then the kids, even getting them that young, thinking they need all that new stuff is just really scary.
Crazy. But I mean, I want to finish up on how I actually met you. So I did a health briefing for Fionnuala. I don't even know what I looked like at that time, because even people at work are always telling me that, because I change my hair quite frequently. But in that process, so Concern we're going to Malawi, even talking about like the bigger organizations and stuff in a global sense, it's the global north is like, so like obviously north of the hemisphere, is responsible for about 92% of like excessive fuel usage and stuff like that. And then COP27, like during 2022, was a big thing where there's now under 7 years now given to, is it 7 or 4 years? Under 7 years given to like where we're going to be at our point of no return, essentially. Right?
Yeah.
In your experiences with that and your understanding of sustainability in Ireland, what was the different topics that came up there? Because whereas fast fashion and stuff might be something that's mad in our ecosystem, but it might be something that they're not thinking of at all.
Yeah, I thought one of the most fascinating things, we had an amazing meeting with the agriculture ministers in Malawi, and I just casually at the end of the conversation, we had fascinating chat, and then they were just, I was like leaving, I was like, so how do you deal with like climate change denial here or anything like that? And they were like, what?
Yeah.
They're like, climate change deniers, not a thing in Malawi, because they can see climate change, they're experiencing it. Like, I was really blown away by how candidly the students that we were chatting to were like, oh yeah, the last drought, like my auntie's house got knocked down, my friend died in the last floods, those kind of things. I was like, good God Almighty. And we're like, don't know if I can have like cycle one day a week and stuff like that. Just the difference in our minor inconvenience or putting ourselves a little bit out of the way versus absolutely massive life-changing loss and damage for them were really, really shocking. And loss and damage is one of the conversations that they have at COP. There was big progress made in COP27 this year, but it's basically $100 billion a year that we're meant to be delivering to all of the people who did not benefit from industrialization the way we did. And that's the reason that we live really lovely lives now. Obviously, if people are suffering with the cost of living crisis, they mightn't feel that way. And especially in Ireland now with the rental crisis and the housing crisis that we have as well, I totally understand, and I am not insensitive to the fact that it mightn't feel like we live in one of the richest countries in the world.
But as well, it's like contextualizing what you're talking about.
Yes,
right?
in the global scheme of things, we are some of the richest people in the world.
Still above like 1%. Like Africa is a massive continent, Asia is a massive continent, right? Whereas agriculture is their main way of getting money.
Yeah, and it's subsistence farmers as well, not like a farmer in Ireland that you might think of who has like loads of land and is quite wealthy off it. It's not like that at all. It's like they were saying like anyone who has a goat, like that's a brilliant thing because that's basically essentially cash walking around that they can just cash in whenever they need. So while I'm vegan as well, and that's a massive distinction to make, I definitely don't preach veganism for everyone, because in Malawi that would just not be a thing that would be a solution, because like they would have the goats and the eggs and stuff like that, and the chickens were like really, really good currency there because of you have it in the garden. That's either money or food. And one of the amazing places that we went to up in the mountains, like I cannot overstate how remote this was. We drove through like about 5 hours of dust tracks up on the Mozambique border into the mountains, like the roads had disappeared, and on top of the mountain they had made a fish farm because they were working with concern to use all this climate smart agriculture solutions. So they'd managed to dam up water and make a fish farm that like had not existed before. But things like that, like there's really, really smart solutions there, and there's people working together to get them done. And I was really proud to see like an Irish presence in there helping with that and facilitating whatever the communities needed. But for me, I just was really, really shook by how unfair they knew that it was, and they didn't seem that annoyed about it. It was reality for them. Whereas like Irish people would not accept that level of unfairness. Like,
well, it also comes back to living with privilege.
Exactly.
Right? Like the droughts is the newer part of oppression for them.
Yeah,
right?
I just wish we could put ourselves in those shoes and understand this issue on that global level, to be like, oh no, that's what climate change means. Like, because I believe in oneness, I believe in global citizenship. I don't see myself, I obviously am Irish, but I don't just see myself as Irish, and especially not in a climate context. I think the rise of nationalism is really scary, and what we're heading into, we're set to have, I think it's 1.2 billion climate refugees now by 2050. So like, if we're looking at what's going on politically, and we can't kind of get ahead of that and be like, no, the climate issue doesn't stop at a border. Like, this is global.
Especially when it kind of started off here, went down there, and now they have nowhere else to run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's and like understanding the context of it, and even just imperialism in itself. Like the way back to like unconscious symbolisms that were taught from the second we're young, right? Even like myself growing up in Nigeria and now living in Ireland, like I'm very comfortable in my mindset and how I live, right? And even working with concern has given me more of like a perspective on the world. But even something that should be, I'm not saying that everywhere in Africa is poor, because it's not. there's some of the richest people are in Africa.
I watched Bling Empire in Africa and I was like, where are these hotels? I want to go to these ones.
It's literally just them in between poverty, right? But it's kind of understanding that, and sometimes when you live in a mindset of oppression all the time, you almost need to get out of that, because it's like, I'm not actively being oppressed right now, right? And it's like, even in 2020 and all of that happened, right? In being able to have your perspective and being able to see the world from everybody else's point of view without almost internalizing that and making that your only identity can be tough.
To the counter, you're saying about getting out of oppression, to get out of privilege, I just think if Irish people, like, if we could get outside of our bubble of all that we have, and we're lucky to live in one of the most climate resilient countries in the world, if we could step outside of that and see what the climate crisis means to other people, I think we'd all be so motivated to up our action and do whatever we can do and fight for anything that we can that's going to make other people's lives that bit better. Because obviously, as I mentioned, there's lots of bad stuff going on in Ireland that doesn't make people feel like we're doing as well as we are in the global scheme. But if you can really get that little bit of insight into how bad it is for other people, I think that would...
Or just figure out how we can make it a bit more equal here. Because like, if you can't, not everybody's going to be able to go for a trip to Malawi. Do you get me?
Oh, absolutely,
a lot of people don't care from one side of Dublin or one side of Ireland to the other.
And that's why even working in the climate space, I think, is a privilege, because I know there's people firefighting every other day of their life that don't get to look outside of it. So that's why, from a policy perspective, we'd be lobbying for all of these different changes that come in that better society. And I think it's really important as well for these changes not to be changes that punch down, because there's lots of things. It's called like this intention action gap or something like that. But it's like, 60% of people want to like move to electric cars. Who the hell has 60 grand sitting around to go buy a new electric car? I certainly don't. So it's those kind of things that it can't just be, here's a load of grants for people who can already afford to buy a brand new electric car. Not that electric cars are the be all and end all of solving the climate crisis. Like, it's giving out free bikes to school kids would be amazing. Adding more public transport routes so people aren't paying to school. Like, free public transport as much as possible. If you really want a mass movement of people onto it, just make it free for a few years. Like, and you're going to...
Massive decapitalising.
Yeah,
right?
Which is not what we're currently set up for, but we'll get there. We'll do the political revolution another day. Yeah.
But no, Fionnuala, that's been amazing. And I mean, like, even since meeting you and following you, like, I've been inspired to kind of rethink my own values, because that's something that I really did enjoy when I was younger. But going into the world, and even something you mentioned where you said maybe not to kind of give kids too much. I actually believe kids are better at dealing with a lot of these topics than we are as adults, because as adults, you're thinking about yourself, you're thinking about your family, you're thinking about all these things. As kids, you can actually see the world as that, and hurt feels a bit like worse. So, you know, like, thank you for obviously speaking out about this, and hopefully it continues going as well for you as it has been. But I mean, we love giving people their flowers, like, as words, but we also would like to give you some flowers. I know you like to press them and stuff. So here you go.
You're so cute. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah.
See, that one I can do. I can't do the, like, literally saw the camera there. I was like, I have no words left in my brain.
But yeah, if there's anything we missed that you'd like to plug while you're here, but other than that, thank you so much for...
Yeah, no, nothing to plug. I just love that you're saying there about going on that journey into your values, because, like, a lot of it can sound a bit mad and a bit, like, removed and stuff like that. But for me, like, I just figured out, like, doing all the climate stuff is living in my values as much as possible, being at one with the world, being at one with everyone else on the planet, and doing as little harm as I can. Yeah. Like, the climate quote I always jump to is Chief Seattle. I think he's just absolutely fantastic, had such wisdom, and all of his people were so good at treating the earth in the way that it is, which is a limited natural resource that we have to live within the boundaries of. But his was like, man did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand within it, and whatever we do to the web, we do unto ourselves. So I just think that's a really handy guiding philosophy to come back to.
Amazing. So guys, if you have watched all this time, thank you. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow Fionnuala for any more sustainable and vegan tips.